some people, even the ones that you love, might not understand what you're going through. I had someone tell me, well, why don't you just take some karate lessons? It's like, okay, not helpful. I mean, what do you think this is, Cobra Kai? No. I'm not going to go beating up people.
The full and free exercise of our sacred right and duty to vote is more important in the long run than the personal hopes or ambitions of any candidate for any office in the land.
You're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, an insider's look at election administration hosted by Brianna Lennon and Eric Fay.
Hey, this is Eric Fay, Director of Elections in St. Louis County, Missouri, and I'm here with my co-host,
Brianna Lennon, County Clerk in Boone County, Missouri.
And we're here at the Election Center Annual Conference in Denver, Colorado.
In this episode, we're sitting down with a couple of local election administrators from two very different parts of California. First, Joanna Francescut in Shasta County, and then Natalie Adona from Nevada County, about how interactions with the public have really changed since 2020, and about how, in many cases, that is making it difficult for the work of local election administrators to get done. And up first, we'll be talking to
Joanna Francescut, Assistant County Clerk, Registrar of Voters for Shasta County in California.
We've talked to a couple other jurisdictions in California before, specifically about, some of the threats and voter attitudes towards election officials right now. What does it look like for you right now, and what are you preparing for? Like, what do you expect to happen in the coming months leading up to 2022?
So we've been in Shasta County. It's been, I wouldn't say chaotic, but it's been chaotic. There's been a lot of strong opinions. In 2020, we had our primary election in March versus June. So our nonpartisan offices, which are our supervisors, they were up for election in March of 2020. Two of the candidates, one ran unopposed, one ran opposed. They actually run their primary outright, and so they didn't go on to the November election. So 10 days after that election, the counties started shutting down, and our constituents were really angry and upset, and they wanted to recall everybody on our board. Well, those people were just elected in March, and it was a lower turnout, and people were frustrated because they didn't vote on that election, and they felt they didn't have their full rights when it came to that because they didn't understand the process. So in 2021, not only were we dealing with the gubernatorial recall, we were also dealing with local recalls as well. So they were trying to recall 3 of our supervisors. Two of them won the election in 2020. So as soon as that time period was up, they said we're doing a recall, and so we were dealing with that group of people. And then they also put a group of people on ballot, and it was a really heated contest, which led to intense election night when most of the countywide contests, they lost outright to those. No one won of their group, and so they were down in our office and chilling with us for a little bit while we're trying to get work done. And it was an experience that I never want to experience again. And we've had to completely mitigate our office and change procedures when it comes to observers. And I just expect people to be watching and asking us questions and then telling us they don't believe us.
You mentioned that you're kind of reevaluating how you handle those observers. Can you be specific about that? Because I think that's something many election administrators are facing, and they probably all would like some input on what other people are doing to prepare for that in the future.
Yeah, so we were really blessed in the past where we would maybe have 1 or 2 observers that would show up the entire process, and we would give them a tour of the office, and we had time to spend with them, and we would answer all their questions, and they would go out saying, "Oh, I love you guys are doing such an amazing job." I mean, that was the reaction we would get every single time. Or if someone was having a hard time with our processes or didn't understand, "Come on down, we have time for you, let's take care of this." In the gubernatorial recall, it started to get to the point where I was doing tours like every 20 minutes, or there was no boundaries. I like to call them boundaries. So set boundaries of when we're doing this work and what we're doing. And then never knowing, if they were asking my staff questions, my staff that's not experienced, or they're just here for this one job, they don't know the big picture, and my staff giving the wrong answer. and intentionally giving them, I mean, even some of our big supervisors, they didn't know that something changed on the other side of things. And she was like, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize I told them the wrong thing. It just got to be a little rough. Again, I was up until 2 o'clock morning doing my work because I was a lot of it dealing with observers. We attempted to establish some boundaries in June of 2022 to make it a little bit clearer of what our expectations were. We still struggled with that. There's some videos online somewhere that you can look and you can see people just walking into our back door and confronting our county clerk because the results are not what they wanted them to be. That is not okay. At any time they were intentionally trying to intimidate us while we're completing the most crucial point of work throughout the process. I had observers trying to talk to me at 7:30 p.m. as I'm preparing reports to go live at 8 p.m. and making sure everything is in place in our voting system and it looks as perfect as we need it to look. Intentionally trying to, inhibit our processes and have us feel like they don't trust us. And that was intentional, I believe. So we're working closely with our county council just to establish base procedures that everybody has to follow. One of the biggest changes we made is we're only doing observable tasks between the hours of 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. and we can take a half an hour lunch break. So my staff have to take a half an hour lunch break at the same time every single day because they can't do any observable task. So it's slowing down our canvas process. However, it's creating a baseline for our staff that they know that they can check their emails from 8 to 9 in the morning, and then they can check their emails from 4 to 5 and get their day-to-day work done. Because not only do we have elections, we have other tasks that we have to do. So it's just establishing boundaries and set expectations within the staff, empowering the staff to say, hey, will you please move? If you stand right there, I can't do my job. And they get 2 times and then they're gone. So it's just establishing those procedures and boundaries and making sure we're training our staff appropriately. So those are the big changes that we've had to make. So
it's almost like the places that you least expect these things to be happening is where they're happening. I mean, I don't think California has a reputation for being like, oh, everything's liberal and everything is like so open and all this stuff is happening. And Missouri has a reputation for not being that, and none of us are dealing with any of this kind of pushback on things. And it blows my mind why these things are happening in the places that they are. And I don't know if you have any opinion about why you think that it is happening there, but it just boggles my mind that there's no rhyme or reason to the places that are being hit hardest with a lot of these. I don't know if it's we talked some about vote culture and the kind of expectations that people have when they go to vote and things like that. And is that part of it? Like, why do you think that it's happening?
I feel like my constituents don't feel like their voice is being heard at all. So we're a very Republican county in a Democratic state. And when the laws that they're having to follow are not the beliefs that they have, it's really hard to continuously have to deal with that. And so I feel like our constituents, they're not being heard in the way that they feel they deserve to be heard, and that's really hard to take. And so it's at the point now where they think the president in 2020, they think he actually won the election and that it was stolen from him. And I'd be pretty angry too if, I've watched some of the videos they've watched. I used to be really angry about it, and now I've kind of turned to be more empathetic towards them, knowing that if I didn't work where I worked and know the steps that we have to do to make sure someone's ballot is counted, that I would be really upset and angry watching those videos, and I would really believe them because they're a lot more believable than the work that I can produce at my office. We just don't have the team that has a strong communications team. I finally got a community education specialist. I mean, it'll be months before I get this person in, and then 4 years to train them. So it's just getting that in there. It just takes time to build that. When you have a president telling us that elections officials are bad, I mean, who are they going to believe? Are they going to believe me or someone that they really fully, for some reason, trust? I don't know. I say this often, but it'd be easier for me to try to change their religion than it is to change their trust in elections right now. I can't change that trust. I don't have their ears. they're not coming in with a humble attitude and willing to listen, and they're angry about the laws we have to follow. They're angry they have to vote by mail. They're just angry right now. They're angry that our county had to be shut down for COVID. They're angry they had lost money. There's a lot of anger that's been built up, and they're feeding off of each other. And I can't solve that for them. They're gonna have to figure that out. I can only control what's happening in my office and the procedures that we're doing and the steps we're following, and making sure we're very, following the rules as best as we can and supporting them as best as we can within those rules and laws.
Why do you continue doing what you're doing? Like, why do you show up for work every day?
I've had to ask myself that a lot lately. I started it because I loved it, and I still love the work we do. I enjoy going through an election cycle and seeing the growth that we've had as a department, looking through and problem solving these issues that we have and how we can improve our processes and make voting easier for our constituents and more transparent and more open. But I show up because I need to show up right now. It's hard sometimes. There's times where I don't want to get up and go. But I just get up and drink my Mountain Dews and go. I mean, that's where I'm at. I get up, and I do this because if I don't do it, then the people that I don't trust will be doing it, and that's a tough pill to swallow. So I'm in there because I have experience, I have knowledge, and a knowledge that's different than my boss because she's elected, but I've worked my way up. So I've had my hands in every process and procedure within our office, and I know it. So I can't explain why I show up. I just do, because I need to be there. It's a need, and it's hard not working sometimes too. So it's hard to shut it off and walk away, but.
Hi, this is Brianna Lennon, County Clerk for Boone County, Missouri, and you're listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, a podcast where we explore local election administration. Today we're talking about how interactions with the public have changed since 2020, especially when it comes to things like election observation and voter education in ways that are making it more difficult to balance having the time to do our day-to-day work as local election authorities with continuing to provide necessary information and education to the public. You just heard from Joanna Francescut in Shasta County, California, and up next is Natalie Adona in Nevada County, California.
All right, so Natalie Adona, who are you? What do you do?
That is the question, isn't it? Who is she? I'm Natalie Adona. I am from Nevada County, California. I'm currently the Assistant County Clerk Recorder, but I am also the Clerk Recorder-elect. I was elected in June of this year, and I will take office in January, I think on my birthday. Actually.
How long were you the assistant or deputy?
3 years.
And what made you want to run for this and be the main person?
The face of the county.
The face of the county.
Oh, yeah. Well, when I was interviewed by the current office holder, his name's Greg Diaz, he said, one of the things I want you to consider, if you want to work with me, is that I'm looking for a successor. And I went, oh, well, I don't know about that, Greg. That sounds like a lot, and I don't really consider myself to be a politician. I consider myself to be, researcher. Most of my background is in research and, keep my head down and do my stuff. I don't know about campaigning. And he's like, well, think about it. But, there were a lot of factors that led me to that job, mostly because I wanted to come back home to California. So I said, I'll just figure it out. And maybe he'll change his mind and he'll run again, but he didn't. And what really sort of set it for me was going through the November 2020 experience, and then the fallout from all of the election lies and the grift. Quite frankly, I could not just leave that county to whoever was going to run. I'd come in with some experience. So I thought, if I don't do this, I will wonder for the rest of my life how things would have turned out. So I'm just going to do it. And if I fall flat on my face, then so be it.
So when you made the leap to run, did you expect, even after watching what everybody went through in 2020 and being part of 2020, was it an experience that you knew when you signed up that it would be as contentious as it has been? Or can you talk a little bit about how the campaign has been?
COVID-19 really sort of changed, I think, a lot of people's behavior, not only out of necessity, but just sort of misinformation and disinformation about public health, about whether wearing a mask was okay or not okay, whether vaccines were safe or not safe, and a lot of voters, I think, had very strong opinions about what counties did to try to mitigate the impact of COVID-19, and our county was no different. So we had a small group of people who initiated a recall of all 5 of our Board of Supervisors in the county because they were unhappy about COVID protocols. They were unhappy that the public health officer would not, sort of authorize ivermectin as a way to treat COVID. They were worried about all kinds of things related to COVID. And, it was a real struggle, I think, for our county to sort of get that under control. So fast forward to the beginning of 2022. This was sort of shortly after these folks had said, we're going to recall all these supervisors, and here's why. We were having a surge in Delta variant, and my staff were really concerned, specifically about the recall proponents who came in big groups, were pretty demanding, and did not wear masks, basically filming their whole journey with this whole recall thing. And my staff are pretty sensitive about being filmed. So I said, okay, well, what would you like to do about it? And they wanted to sort of revert back to a stricter COVID protocol. We had sort of gotten relaxed. And so I said, okay, I'm going to talk to county council. I'm going to talk to our risk manager and, all these people to see what we can do. And, they said, absolutely, you can initiate a stronger protocol. Well, these people didn't like it. And it really got tense. I ended up, and it's probably something I should not have done, but I lost my temper a little bit with one of the proponents. Of course, they got it all, on their iPhone. I said, well, there's signs everywhere. I've offered to serve you outside of this office. They refused. I eventually served them. They left, and we sort of further restricted movement inside of the office, and they did not like that, ended up pushing their way through our office. The door that they pushed through struck one of my staff members, and it really freaked people out. One of the proponents actually threatened me, and my staff, sort of ran down the hall, in the non-public area of my office. I was, sort of thinking, sort of 2 thoughts. One, my staff look incredibly scared, and, 2, what am I going to do? There is an open office plan, really. The only thing that separates that public from the private area is this swing door that maybe comes up just past my knee. So you can easily step over this thing if you wanted to, and sort of do anything you want. And it really made me think about safety, the physical safety of people in my office. And ever since then, the campaign became very fraught, because not only was I seen as an extension of my boss's term, but also somebody who enforces unconstitutional rules like mask wearing and all of this stuff. So I basically was the subject of stories every week in our local newspaper. Anytime there was any sort of effort to educate voters and my name was attached to it, they said that I broke state campaign finance rules. I didn't, by the way. Someone tried to disqualify me. Even after the election, even though I won by 14,957 votes. Somebody wanted a recount on behalf of second place, and it was some random guy from Southern California who was one of the people who was on the Recall Gavin Newsom campaign. Gavin Newsom, for those of you who don't know, is my governor. And could not understand why my boss would tell anybody, why he would share the letter saying that he wanted a recount. And it's like, buddy, you want transparency. This is what that is. I have to tell my constituents what's going on. I am now also going back to court because apparently, according to some people, I have violated our Public Records Act request. By the way, I didn't, but I've got to spend time and money going to court anyway. So yeah, that's fun. All of that said, I have the best job in the world. I would not change it for anything. And I'm not going to let some people try to bully me out of my job when I know what I'm doing. And I think this occupies a sort of small chunk of my life, even though it didn't feel like it for a long time. I love elections. I love making sure that people have the right to vote. And I have a lot of fun at the county. You know, me and my staff, we have a great time doing what we do. You know, sometimes people try to make us not have a good time, but they're not in there every day. Not yet.
So one thing I'm curious about, having been through this experience, do you think it's a good idea to have the chief election official elected in this case?
That's something I've thought about a lot, actually. Some officials in my state are appointed. It's usually in the bigger cities and counties, but most of the rest of us are elected. And, you know, on the one hand, I think that there's potentially a sort of weird conflict when you have someone who's running elections being on the ballot. One of the things that sort of drove me nuts about the campaign is I took myself away from a lot of those processes. You know, even with none of this other stuff happening, I would have done that. But, you know, I also think that, you know, you're only accountable to a handful of people if you're appointed. There is sort of something to be said about being accountable directly to voters and not to a county board. There's a little bit more freedom, I think, when you are elected. I mean, when I take office, I won't have a boss. Or I should say, my boss will be the people, and I'll have to be accountable to them. So, I mean, which one's better or not better? I mean, I don't know. I guess it's a matter of perspective.
So going into 2022's midterms, and really I feel like a lot of the conversation has even gone beyond that, and we're just kind of focused on what to expect in 2024 now. Your experience having so much animosity thrown at you is unfortunately not considered an outlier anymore, and there's a lot of states that have had similar issues. You're extremely resilient and can talk about it very easily. I know that there's a lot of people that are that have been scared away from it as well. What have you been able to do to kind of, you know, keep spirits high with your staff, keep going? And then do you have any advice for anybody that's going through it right now?
I'll answer that, but I will say that, you know, I always haven't felt resilient. There were, you know, many moments, you know, especially, you know, that, you know, near that time where, you know, I was looking at my staff and they're, you know, just so frightened by these people. And, you know, I had to go to court to get a, you know, restraining order against one of our citizens. I mean, that was really intense. And, you know, there were a lot of moments where, you know, I have told people it was hard for me to even get up off of my kitchen floor because I could not breathe, and was, you know, just so worried about the unknown. And I mean, I never had panic attacks before in my life until then. So, you know, with that, I, you know, do try to focus on the positive stuff about coming to work. I mean, we get to help voters. And some of these people, I mean, they don't know the rules. They just want to vote. So, there's a great joy and fulfillment in that. And, my staff love doing that. And yeah, I mean, people are shitty sometimes, but, what can you do about that? Can I say shitty?
Yeah.
I just said it twice. Cool. With them, I do try to remind them that their job is important to, not only the county, but to me. That we all have an important role to play, and they're vital to everything that we do. I would say for others who just kind of don't want to sort of talk to these issues. I mean, I get it. I mean, who wants to relive trauma? There were times when I had the media calling me and they're like, "Oh, something crappy happened to you. How does that make you feel?" And I didn't want to talk to them, but in my head, I'm like, "Well, how the hell do you think it makes me feel?" But it was the last thing that I wanted to do, and I think that it's sort of a personal choice if you want to share your story with others. I would say it's been really great for me to have people in my life who I know love me very much, who will just like sort of sit there and listen to all of my garbage. I do sort of understand that impulse, the need to try to be helpful. I have talked to certain colleagues who have talked about what it would mean to get like a concealed carry. That's crossed my mind as well. I have not gone there yet. I don't know anyone who's really gone there yet, or at least I don't know anyone personally who's gone there yet. I'm sure some have. I would say, do what's practical, do what's right for you, have a support system, and, focus on the things that matter and, why you were there to begin with.
You've been listening to High Turnout, Wide Margins, the podcast that explores local election administration. I'm your host, Brianna Lennon, alongside Eric Fay. Thanks to KBIA for making this podcast possible. Our managing editor is Rebecca Smith. Our managing producer is Aaron Hay, and our associate producers are Abigail Ruman and Katie Quinn. This has been High Turnout, Wide Margins. Thanks for listening.